listening to Nightmare on Film Street. The current time is 6:66. Traffic is clear ahead from here to the afterlife, but it's hell outside. For the next hour, you're on Nightmare time. So, let's give a grave welcome to our hosts, Jon and Kim.
Hello again, fiends, and welcome to a very special episode of Nightmare on Film Street. We're taking a tour down Nightmare Alley. I'm Kim.
I'm Jon.
And we're talking to Krsy Fox and Spider-One about their very awesome sort of horror anthology, Allegoria.
Yeah, this movie kicks so much ass. I can't say enough good things about it. We sort of raved about it after Panic Fest. If you listen to our What's Keeping Us Creepy about the best movies we saw back in April, and I'm so happy this movie's finally out. I need to talk to people about it.
Yeah, it just dropped on Shudder, so if you have a Shudder subscription, you can watch it immediately following this interview. It's not too spoilery. We try not to be so spoilery that we ruin the film. And this one's doesn't really have, things to be spoiled. It's more of a, let's meditate on the state of creativity and why it fucking ruins us all.
Yeah, so Kim calls it a sort of horror anthology because it's 5 contained stories about the darkness that visits artists, deep in the middle of the night when they have doubts about what they're doing. Obviously they take that to a much more horror place. There's fucking monsters. There's a screenwriter literally has the villain from his screenplay show up to beat the shit out of him, like Jason Voorhees style. But it is I don't want to say deeply artistic anthology.
That's what I love most about it is that it's not just one type of horror. It's not just slasher type. It's not just monster filled. It's got some psychological moments. It's got some really funny fucking moments.
Hell yeah. Every single one of these looks like a 10-15 minute preview of a full ass movie you want to watch.
Yeah, we enjoyed this movie so much when we saw it on the big screen. We watched it again on the small screen, and it was just as fucking fantastic. So I can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts on the film.
And it's also 70 minutes. It takes no time. It is the perfect runtime. 90 minutes, great. Less than 90 minutes, ideal. But yeah, this movie kicks a lot of ass. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of different types of movies. I think any horror fan will appreciate it.
And especially if you do anything creative in your life, if you're a creative person, this is going to resonate with you so fucking much.
Oh yeah, it deals with actors, it deals with fine art painters, writers,
photographers, sculptors.
Musicians, absolutely. I think everybody who's done any sort of creative endeavor will see themselves in this movie at least once, and it's kind of funny when it shows up. There's a scene where a guitarist is hanging out with his band after practice, just getting super high, talking about the cosmic nature of music, and I was like, I hate to say it, but I've been this guy and I've had this exact conversation.
Oh fuck.
But the other really cool thing about Allegoria is that it is a movie really made by Spider-One and Krsy Fox. They did damn near everything on this movie. Obviously, Spider-One wrote and directed it. They both produced it. Krsy edited it, did the sound design.
And she stars in it.
She's fucking incredible in this movie. Oscar-worthy performance. If we're all still mad about Toni Collette, get ready for another letdown.
But we were lucky enough to sit down with them and chat the film and all about how it was conceived, how it was filmed in 6 days.
It's insane.
This film is just a testament of what raw creativity and just hitting the pavement and making something can be like.
Yeah, I think you'll probably want to run out and if
buy
not,
a video camera.
Yeah, buy a video camera. Take your guitar out of the attic. I think this movie's probably going to inspire you, and also it has some great nightmare imagery in it.
But enough from us about the film. Let's get to our interview with Spider-One and Krsy Fox on Allegoria.
I need you to look at me when I'm speaking.
Death needs more death. I am an allegoria of nothing.
Others have seen what is and ask why. I have seen what could be and ask why not.
Well, my friend, You did it again.
Art is in everything and everyone. You could be a rock star. Hi, rock star.
Krsy, Spider, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today on the podcast. We're really excited to chat with you about Allegoria.
Yeah. I mean, you guys were like so early on seeing this film at Panic Fest, so it's crazy. I hope you remember what the film was about, because it's been months, right?
We've pretty much been talking about it nonstop since, so yeah, we got a pretty good read on it.
Good.
Yeah, it was great at that at Panic Fest, because we didn't know anything about it. It was just like, oh yeah, we're just gonna see every movie that's playing, and like, oh yeah, we'll see this Allegoria, cool title, let's see what it's about. I think like 5 minutes into the movie, we both just leaned into each other like, I think this is the best movie I've ever seen.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I feel like at Panic Fest we were that movie that no one knew anything about. It's like a lot of the movies had either been maybe had a trailer out for a while, or were maybe even out, I don't know, or had some limited theatrical or played other festivals. And I think we were just what the fuck is this movie? You know, so it was kind of fun to be that film.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool poster too. Like it's impossible not to want to watch it when you just got like this monster face screaming at you.
Yeah. No makeup involved at all in that picture, right?
No, that's kind of what I look like right now.
That's the no filter look.
Yeah. This morning.
So where did the original idea for this come from?
Yeah, I mean, it really was. It's interesting because it wasn't a grand plan to make a feature, or I guess what people can refer to as an anthology. It really started as filming that first segment with John Ennis and as the acting teacher, because I just had this idea for this little short segment, and it's sort of I guess proof of concept in my own brain that I had the ability to make something that made sense and looked good, and so we finished that, and I just couldn't really shake the idea that there was more to this, this idea of art combined with horror and other forms of art, and how that could manifest these troubling situations for our characters. And so it really just then became creating a cool puzzle, and putting the pieces together, figure out there's painting, there's music, and going through the list of what would make compelling subjects for the stories. And then the fun part was just kind of reverse engineering and figuring out how we were going to connect the dots with these circumstances and characters.
It's so interesting.
From then on, it just went,
Yeah, to hear that, like the very beginning, it was kind of just a short, because the film is very cyclical in that way, like where the end kind of takes you back to the beginning, and it's so interesting that came afterwards.
Yeah, and I think that was the big challenge, after making, and if I'm not mistaken, we did shoot them all in order. So when it came down to the final one, it was really the biggest challenge figuring out like, okay, this can't just be another segment with, some small tie. So we had to figure out, how is this going to all come back around? How is this going to give the film a bigger purpose, and so by making the fifth story essentially the first story I think was the key to making this thing work. I think it still would have been 5 cool stories that you could enjoy watching, but I think the fact that this timeline now loops back, for me anyways, makes it a much more interesting movie. I think when Krsy, there's a for anyone who sees the movie, there's a phone conversation that happens in the second story, and then that same phone conversation happens in the fifth story, but from the reverse perspective. For me, was just like one of the coolest moments in the movie.
Did you shoot it in order because you wanted to make sure that like everything lined up, or was there like a logistical reason why you guys did it that way?
I think it just fell into place. I don't think, I suppose you could have rearranged them to a certain degree. I mean, I think 1 and 5 have to stay where they are. The other ones maybe could have shuffled, but it just felt right, sequence. It's funny. There's a similarity to sequencing an album, when you put your songs together and like what's going to flow into the next and when it's time to take a breath and when it's time to amp it up. And I think that it just felt like this was the right order.
And so Chris, how is it to act? You have like such a hard role in this movie. You have a lot of roles in this production in general, but it's almost like you play 3 different characters in this movie. Like you've got your monster, you've got your artist, and then you've got this deeper, darker person that is really unsettling in the movie. Was it hard to jump into all that?
We started with the monster thing. So I knew how far it was going to go, which helped because then it was almost just like taking emotions back different steps and knowing how ultimately what was going to happen to this person. And so it was weird to just really mold who she was as just a regular person because she's just this very timid, vulnerable, abused character. She's like her boyfriend is awful to her and her the acting coach, and just all she wants is just to be successful and to be, someone to be proud of her. And so it was a really, once the character started coming together, I started thinking about who she really was. And it just made me so sad for her that when we got to the point of that big ending, I was just legitimately so sad. And I was just imagining this girl stuck deep down inside this body and just like, all she wanted was just to be accepted and to succeed. And it just kind of came out naturally. I thought that it was fun to go back and shoot like me actually transforming, because at the beginning of the movie, like you just see little moments of my character. So actually seeing the progression and stuff, that was really fun. And to actually get all the way there on camera was probably one of my favorite parts, other than doing that weird end scene where it was just one of those moments on set that we just did one take from each angle and that was it. And it connected and it just felt like, I think everybody just felt really sad for this person. All the crew, everyone was so quiet and like Josephine, who played opposite of me, she was just like tears running down her face at the end of the scene. Wow. And it was just one of those moments that doesn't happen all the time on a set. And so it was, for me as an actor, really rewarding. And Spider wrote this incredible dialogue that, like he always says, it could have either really worked or really not worked, and it would have ruined the movie if it didn't work. And I feel like it's such a unique moment, and it's just like, clearly this is not how this girl really speaks and this weird information she's giving. So it just all kind of came out very naturally, and it was really fun to do this. And we shot basically that whole last segment. We shot it over 2 days, but that whole, like all the interaction with Josephine and I was all one day. So,
wow.
So it's really quick.
I'm sure it felt like a long day though. Damn. I can't believe you did that in like one take, like from either side. It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it was almost necessary, because I feel like we could have done it 5 more times, but I feel like, well, one, you just know when you have it, and, I think it would have been different had we done it more times, but I don't think it would have been better, and like Krsy said, it was when I wrote, I mean, if anyone's seen the movie, they know what we're talking about, but there's this really bizarre moment where Brody has sort of post-possession mode, but so sort of half herself and half not, and she has this fairly awkward, uncomfortable conversation with her terrified roommate, too afraid to leave the conversation. But yeah, like Krsy alluded to, I remember thinking like, if this doesn't work, man, the movie's still going to be cool, but it's just not gonna, it all in an odd way, it all sort of hinged on that moment, because it really does change the tone of the film. And we've seen it twice now with an audience, and everyone's sort of along for this ride, and then it gets to that, and you can feel just feel the tone of the room change in the theater, and so that's when
nervous laughter.
Yeah,
like everybody feels like hope, They want to get the fuck out of this conversation.
Oh, this got dark.
Well, that's why you get a pro like Krsy, right? Like you need somebody to fucking nail it on the first take, because it really changes the whole movie.
You know, it's interesting because when we did shoot the original sequence with John Ennis, like Krsy doesn't have that much to do, but the monster situation was so important. And you know, the one thing, I mean, clearly she's a great actress, but she's also like her physicality. She can do such extreme stuff, and she's not afraid to like get hurt or really go for it, you know? So that's why we were like, you know, I almost felt like, oh, I'm wasting your acting talent, just making you a monster. But so fortunately we were able to pay it off with the fifth story and, you know, putting some real like dramatic moments to tackle as well.
I have to say this.
I thought that was. Sorry, was that?
I was just gonna say this is probably the only movie where you're really like happy for the character when they get possessed. You're like, good for her.
I know, right? She showed him, right? Yeah, it's a little bit of a female revenge moment, which is nice. But yeah, no, I think the cool thing too about some of that stuff that we did in the end scene is we always rehearse a lot with the films we do, because we have such a small amount of time. We shoot everything usually, like every segment was all shot in one day other than the end one. So there's a lot of rehearsal, and that the cool thing about that end scene for Josephine and I anyway was that Spider didn't want us to ever rehearse it. So he'd never seen us do it, and we never did it with each other. So it was sort of this really weird moment that I think everyone authentically was just super uncomfortable, which I think helped a lot for everybody. So yeah, that was a really unique thing we've never really done in any of our films.
Wow. Wasn't it also, I'm just like remembering something you said in the Q&A after the premiere at Panic Fest. Wasn't it also so uncomfortable that you guys forgot to shoot the end of the movie?
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah, that was my fault. I don't know what happened. I mean, you know, like you said, we shoot so fast, and we shoot, you know, and I don't know what clicked in my brain, but I just thought we were done. And I think I know what it was. So I had my script pages, and the last page was literally like 2 sentences, like Hope walks back to the couch, sits down, 6 notes rise, whatever, you know, giving away the ending of the film. Great. But anyway, and so I guess I neglected to turn the page and realize. And so it was an amazing moment. Got back home, was so excited. We just nailed that scene. Krsy like, let me make you a margarita. I'm like, yeah, celebrate. And then I'm sitting there taking a sip, and I'm just like, forgot to film the end of the movie. Like literally the last 30 seconds of the movie.
I thought he was lying for like at least a half an hour. I was like, there's no way you're that stupid. He's like, no, I shot her leaving the room and walking down the hall. And then I was like, that's a wrap. And I'm like, oh my God, call everybody. You have to shoot it tomorrow or we're going to be fucked. Like,
so fortunately, everybody was still available. The location was still available. And we all went back and knocked out what we missed. It only took a few hours, but it was just crazy. You know,
that's got to be so stressful.
One of those things,
yeah.
You know.
Well, it's probably also too that you were like, this final moment with Krsy is so big, we have to fucking nail it. I'm sure you were just like obsessing over that.
And once you got it in the can, you're like, yeah, we're done.
Yeah.
Well, and normally I would stay on set, which I always do, but I was like, it was such a long day, and I had like this crazy headache, and I was like, oh, they have like literally 15 minutes left to shoot. I'm gonna take off early, and so I'm like, oh, cool. That was really fast. You wrapped super fast. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you didn't shoot anything else.
The one time you leave him alone.
I know. That's
guys, okay, enough on this subject. You've all made your point. I'm an idiot. Okay.
It's crazy too that like, didn't you get shut down because of COVID? Like, even though your shoot was only like 6 days long, like you were still like, oh well, I guess we got to pack up and go home for a while.
We didn't get shut down. Well, we started the first, I guess not technically shut down, but when we did the first scene with Ennis, it was like 2 days before COVID just became a thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, but then we picked up. I mean, we found ways to do it. We had to abide by all the SAG COVID protocol that at certain points of this thing was insane. The things you had to do, you know, you needed.
Well, it was
draw
so early on, yeah.
diagrams of your location and where the windows were and where you're going to put the fans and where people were going to stand when they had lunch and all this, but we did everything that we were supposed to get this thing done. And,
we had the smallest crews you could imagine. Like it was actually hilarious. The amount of people, sometimes there's like maybe 10 people on set. Like that's it. It was
and that's including actors.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it just goes to show you can accomplish quite a bit with very few people if everybody is prepared and talented. I think sometimes when people make smaller films, they dig themselves a hole by thinking that they're making some, $100 million feature instead of just going, hey man, we need a DP, a sound guy, and my actors and makeup, and let's go. And then you can do it, if the concept is simple enough.
Is that sort of like a ethos that the two you work that you hold and everything else that you do? Like, do you try and keep it simple? Like, try not to overthink everything?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we like to, having a minimal crew in general, even with a larger budget, is easier. Less people, less going on, and more control. And I think I'm even more than Spider. I'm like, we can do this. Yeah. I'm like, look, we can shoot something in 4 days. Sure. Of course we can. We're going to do it. We'll break it down. And I think I make him crazy, but it ends up happening. I think you just have to be like, you have to do the pre-work, which is just like scheduling, rehearsing, spending a lot of time with the DP, going through shots. And if you do all the work ahead of time on the day, it's actually not as bad as people would imagine. I find that it's usually when there's effects that can be the thing that slows everything down. And if I always tend to like to shoot the effects first because that can end up being a full day. But yeah, I think so. What do you think, Spider?
Yeah, I mean, there's a funny story. I don't know if it's a true story or not, but apparently like some famous director who I don't know who was went and visited Stanley Kubrick when he was shooting one of his movies. And this other director was like, where's your crew? He's like, this is it. He's like, how many do you need? So I think there is if he feels that way, then I'm going to stick with that. You know what I mean? Like you don't, I think you can get bogged down with having too many. I mean, I say that now, but I also would probably love having 200 people working on a movie and feeling like king of my domain. But right now, keeping it simple is definitely the way that I think it's why we accomplish so many things so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, at least you were able to get away from the one problem Stanley Kubrick always had, where he's like, you know what, 200 takes is fine. Let's just do another 50 just to see what's what.
I'm the opposite. As clearly, I don't even shoot some of the movies.
But you also, like in saying that you keep your crew very small, that's kind of hiding the fact that you guys have a bunch of hats when you do stuff. Like you carry a bunch of roles on your own. How do you guys divvy stuff up? Is it like kind of a natural thing or?
Well, I think with our production company, I do all the posts. I edit it. I do the sound design and music. So if there's like, for instance, like Allegoria, like Spider was doing the music as well with me. Like he wrote 8 Legs and but yeah, I tend to do all the post, which really helps for us because we can shoot something and go home that night and start editing it. And it's like, it moves the project along. You're not waiting on anybody. It definitely helps with the cost, but it's more just about like us having control over the creative. I always say it's almost like you get your painting 75% of the way there and then you let someone else finish it. That just feels weird to me.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy doing the post side of it. And production wise, I think that, Spider's really great with a lot of like the art department stuff. I mean, we both like to do that in wardrobe, but he's really involved and I tend to do a lot of more of the paperwork type stuff, which is really fun.
Everybody's favorite part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just fun to be involved. And even if we did hire out, 100 people for separate departments, it would still be in their hands-on. I mean, it's just a way to do it. It's not unlike being in a band where, some bands, they write the songs and they don't care what the videos look like, or they don't care what the album cover is. They farm it out. And then there are other bands, like the way I've always approached it is just do everything. You write the songs, you design the wardrobe, you design the album covers, you write the press release, because it's your thing, and you want to feel connected to as many parts of it as possible. And I think that's what the same with these films is just I love getting in there and distressing wardrobe and picking out what people are going to wear and painting walls and do whatever it is. And set designing. It's your world. So like, who else is going to know better? Yeah. Maybe at some point you'll have people to assist you in that, but it still has to be your final say and your vision to make it feel right for you. Because no one's going to, no one can climb inside your brain and execute what you have. So you have to do it yourself as much as you can.
I completely agree with you. Like we're also the kind of people that just do everything ourselves if we can, or we teach ourselves how to do it if we think we can.
Yeah.
But do you think that like I'm just thinking like Allegoria is a movie about artists who have fucking darkness visit them. Like do you think that approach is what kind of ends up tipping you over the edge occasionally? Like I have to assume you both have days where you're like you self-doubt.
Yeah.
You have days where you really beat yourself up.
100%.
Never.
Yeah. No, I mean, we just finished our next film. We just shot it, and we just finished the first pass edit, and that one was a beast. We shot all night shoots, 7 days, in the middle of the desert, horrible conditions. Like it was just, and then even in the edit, there are certain scenes I'm like, I was just hitting a wall. I'm like, I hate this. I can't even look at this. I'm gonna do this at the end, and yeah, I definitely. And Spires tells a story, I'm sure he'll love to tell you from the set, from this last one. But yeah, I remember the 7th day shooting this film and it just being like, they had a couple scenes left that were pretty important for my character. And I was like, I don't even care if we shoot them. We'll figure something else out in the end. Like, I don't want to do this. I'm so tired. I just want to go to bed. I want to go home. I really want a glass of wine, but the sun's coming up. Like that was it.
Yeah, I mean, we ran ourselves ragged, but yeah, and I think it does. I mean, it's interesting with like you said about Allegoria, and it's all based on people being obsessed. And clearly, sometimes you don't see yourself until someone else points it out. But like that is what we're doing, and to a level of where those demons do arise. You know what I mean? And those where you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself because you're too wrapped up in chasing this obsession, of getting a movie done or getting something done. And so, yeah, I think, those stories hit home more than maybe you consciously realize until later. Maybe like you pointed out, you're like, yeah, I saw an interview with a clip of an interview with Steven Spielberg the other day where someone was talking about Close Encounters. And they said, Steven Spielberg, what did your parents do? And he said, well, I think it was my dad was a musician or my mom was a musician and my other parent worked on computers. And he's like, oh, well, how did the humans communicate with the aliens in Close Encounters? He's like, holy shit, music and computers. He's like, yeah. I've never even put those things together. And sometimes you don't realize how much of yourself is in the things you write, and other people can see it clearer than you can, and sometimes you don't figure it out till much later. They're like, wow, that's me right there, but you didn't realize it when you were writing it.
I think that's why the film resonated so much with us because we're kind of the same way. And you've had the opportunity to screen the film a couple of times. Have you kind of got the same response from creative people, artists? Are they just like, I see myself?
I hear it a lot from, especially doing these interviews, because most people we talk to are writers, so they tend to, man, like that screenwriter one, someone at the LA premiere, I think they wrote me a message saying, man, I slunk down on my seat. That was me on screen, and so, yeah, I think, another friend of mine said, you made the most LA movie since Swingers, so people are definitely relating and seeing themselves in this, as artistic people. But I think that even if you're not an artist, I think it'll be fun for people to look into a world maybe they're not familiar with. But I think everybody can share the same feelings, the same feelings of inadequacy or obsession or, no matter what they do. But there is a special place for it in creative people's, consciousness, because we are all crazy for sure.
And you tap all facets. Like you have painting, you have writing, you have acting. Like everybody gets a moment where they're like, yeah, it is like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my
and it's
favorite...
fun too. I think there's an interesting in the story with Scout and Adam Bush, I think it's kind of the one with Adam being the one non-artist character. It's interesting to step into the world. I think a lot of people can be that guy, just not understanding art and having this, kooky artist kind of try to walk you through it. And he's just like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Cool.
Yeah.
But he's also an aspiring artist. He wishes he was that. Like he wishes he was the musician. But he just didn't. He didn't go for it quite the way that Scout did.
Yeah. There's I have a question about that scene, but there's such a great fucking moment in that segment that we were always like head over heels about, where she holds a knife to her neck, he freaks out, and it's like, there you go. I went from a girl to an emotion. And I'm like, that's fucking amazing. I love that.
No question.
No question. But I was curious. I'm spoiling the end of that segment for anybody that hasn't watched it. So I skip ahead 15 seconds if you want. Is Scout's art photography or is it murder?
Well, I think she referenced herself as a she's a sculptor.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
So then he goes, oh, and then if you catch it, he asks, oh, like, like clay? And she's like, really? So what I get out of it is my intention was that her sculptures are her victims.
Got it.
And so she gets to know them, and like she did Adam's character, and he confessed to her when he was a kid he wanted to be a rock star. So she makes him a rock star at a certain point through her art and through her sculpture. So yeah, I think that I know she takes pictures of her art with her Polaroid camera, which is another added level to her character. But yeah, I think the idea is that she just turns her victims into her sculptures.
She makes their dreams come true.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Such a good date.
Yeah.
Yeah, from one side of the table, great date, great first date.
Yeah.
You got to be a rock star. So we talking about like the murder victim sculptures and your monster face and I can't remember the name of him, but the paint monster.
Yeah, that's what we call him, the paint monster. Yeah.
Did you two make all of that stuff yourselves?
No, I'll design what I want the monster to look like, but we had a couple of really talented makeup artists and effects people, Gitsy and Ashley, great, just young, talented people. And, I'd maybe like draw a sketch or discuss with them. Like the paint monster was an interesting one because it was like, I didn't know how you would achieve that look, the sort of dripping, burning paint. And I originally I think I sent her a picture of like one of those black like S&M masks, shiny. I'm like, I wanted to be shiny like this, but just like no expression. And so she's like, oh, I have this great material that just kind of, you apply it and it starts to melt, but then it dries. So it was amazing. So that was a good indication of somebody taking this idea and being able to execute it in a way that, better than I could have imagined.
Yeah, I think like the little things they did made it really special. Like even the monster that I become, they have these prosthetic lips on me. Like that's the only real prosthetics they had, but it just makes my face really like off-putting. And I think that's like a great makeup artist where you're not just painting, you're doing like little elements. And like Ashley sat there and made all the little lesions herself. And so she like apply them as we go. And like little things like that, I think really make it unique and special.
Yeah, that's a great little touch. Yeah, because like your mouth becomes, it's like you look like a real person, but something about like there's an uncanny valley thing where like something about this is really wrong.
Yeah,
just other than like the goop hanging out of her.
Yeah, and plus I got to have really crazy lips for a day, which was really fun. It was
before we did the actual monster makeup, you just looked like an Instagram model gone wrong. Like
yeah, totally.
Lips that were just so fake looking, but
that's a whole other movie though.
Yeah.
Did you get to eat while you had the lips on? Was that hard? Or even just drinking water?
I didn't even try, honestly. Like it was so uncomfortable. And then once they put the stuff in my mouth, it was like Pepto-Bismol mixed with like coloring. And I just was like, I couldn't eat the whole, I was like, my mouth everything tasted disgusting, like that horrible. But yeah, it looked really, really gross because it was. So
Yeah,
I think
great.
the second time we did it, I actually almost threw up. Like I was like dry heat when I went in the bed. Like I was like, oh my God, I put too much in my mouth and it was like really bad. So
I just imagine Spider seeing you about to throw up, like, roll the camera, get it.
yeah, totally.
More vomit.
So post-production wise, I'm curious what your process is like for sound design. We actually have some friends that are staying with us that are, you know, visiting from out of town. So we were like, hey, it's been great hanging out, but we have to watch this movie for an interview tomorrow. And like the thing that he was raving about throughout the whole movie was how great the sound was. So I would really want to hear about that.
Cool. I mean, I edit it first, and then I always do the dialogue first, get that close. And then it usually goes into more of the sound designing stuff before the music. Once in a while, obviously, like with the 6 notes and stuff, it was important to have the music in there pretty early. But it's like, we usually start pretty simple. And this film is pretty simple. It's just a lot of tones and frequencies, but it's usually like the progression. I always do the boring part first, which is putting the dialogue in, you know, because that always is just kind of more tedious than anything. But yeah, then it's fun because if you start really simple, then, you know, we can go in and layer it. And, you know, Spider will be like, it needs more. Like I think when my transition scene, we even added like raccoons mating and like weird things like that you wouldn't think about, but it really works, and like bubbles and just bizarre sounds that don't seem like they would make sense. But I think we've learned by doing this a lot that you're like, we need a sound for this, and it doesn't always have to be a practical sound. Sometimes it's cool if you use something else that it's more off-putting and more unique. So
yeah, when you think about sound design for film and music for film, it's a very odd thing, because you're filming real things happening and real people doing things, but in real life you're not hearing, you know, synthesizer sounds or orchestras playing, but so then you're faced with this weird task of creating. It's, you know, the way I like to think of it is like, what the sound design is what you're feeling in your head if this was happening to you. So I mean, I love just unnerving, like it can be very simple. I'm not so far in any of these movies, we haven't really done traditional scoring. It's more just, I love that, you know, 70s and 80s of weird, like, you know, I think it was because someone probably got their hands on an early synthesizer and was like, wow, listen to this, you know, and you know, these weird tones and stuff that don't, but that's the stuff I grew up hearing. So I tend to go that route where it's just like, and yeah, and the same thing with she's referencing, and you're building these layers of sound where, you know, something simple might be happening, like somebody's, you know, bone breaking, but you don't just make a sound of a bone breaking. You're adding these different things in there to heighten it, but also keep, you know, for our movies, I think we like to keep it fairly grounded. You know, we've made reference watching other shows, and we watch Stranger Things, and they're like over the top sound, like someone drops a backpack on the floor. It's like, you know, like some kind of explosion. It's like, yeah, that's a bit much, but it's super effective for certain things. It just depends what you're trying to portray. Like it works great for Stranger Things, but I think like, yeah, if you're trying to make a really grounded movie, what Spider's saying makes a lot of sense, where you're like, you know, simplify and make you feel like you're really in the room. And yeah, and keep some natural stuff going. I mean, I watched Taxi Driver again last night for the 1,000th time, and that movie is amazing because, man, everything's just natural. So if a police car went by, the siren's in there. Everything, people screaming out on the street, and there's something about that that's just you don't really see in modern film very often. You know, because everything's like cleaned up and scrubbed up and 80 yard, and everything's perfect, and you know, so it's nice to try to capture a little of that, you know, old school natural vibe.
Yeah, I always favor that. Like there's like a real door closing, or, you know, at a film where like the floors would creak constantly. I'm like, well, they're in an old house. That's what it sounds like. I always will keep the real sound. I'm not going to sit there and pull out natural, ambiance. It doesn't make sense.
how do you have like raccoons mating just like part of the toolbox? Like, do you have a library that you're just like going through, or did you hear that one time and you were like, I gotta remember that?
No, it's weird. It's like, well, sometimes, sometimes we actually, Foley stuff, and then sometimes you'll like, you can go, I have a library of weird sounds, and then sometimes you'll just go searching for something and you're like, you don't know why. Like, we tend to do that a lot. Like, why are we looking for this? But it tends to work. I don't really know why. That's just kind of like the way our brains kind of work. We're like, what'd be really cool is, raccoons mating. I don't know. Or I use like rattlesnake sounds for something that doesn't have a snake and, things like that. We like the use of things like clocks to keep like tension with what's more of a natural sound. And the frequency things are really cool. Like, you can get some really unnerving where you almost don't even notice there's sound in there, but it's just something. It's like making your stomach turn a little bit, and that's really cool.
Yeah, like really low bass stuff, right?
Yeah, and then there's just there's just these weird. Yeah, it's hard to even explain because it's way more of a feeling than even an awareness that there's sound going on.
Yeah, I love the improvisation of it because it sounds a lot like let's just throw it on there and see how it feels, and if it works, it stays.
Totally. And then, we tend to commit pretty quick. If we're like, it feels right, then it's right. We're not going to sit there and, nitpick something. It's sort of like, if you have a great take, you're like, well, it's right. So let's just trust it and move forward,
You guys sound incredibly busy, by the way. Like, you do all of these things for each of your projects, but then you also, it sounds like you don't give yourself time in between projects. Like, this movie's coming out, well, this movie's coming out next week at the time, and at the time anybody's listening to it, it's already out, but you've already got another one finished. I'm sure you're planning another one right now. Spider's on tour. When do you sleep?
We don't. I'm so tired.
Not to mention we have a toddler too, so that's just like a whole other level of insanity.
Yeah, I
don't know. I mean, it's that's her fault. That's Krssy's fault. I'm the one that would be like, let's do a movie next year, and she's like, we have to do it now, and I'm like, oh, God. It's like
I get very antsy. Like, I feel like I can't sit for long. I felt like we have a podcast that is it's a very time consuming podcast because it's original scary stories and sound design and stuff like that. So it's. That was taking up a lot of time, but I think that it's hard. You start missing like just being on set and making something new. And, we've had Allegoria in the can for a while. So it's like, it felt like we needed to shoot something. I don't know. I can't sit around.
But it is a lesson learned for anybody out there, not that they have to be as insane as us and make, 2 movies in a year and go on tour and, whatever. But, sometimes, the hardest part of doing anything that's going to be meaningful in your life is just starting, because you give yourself a million reasons why you can't, or why you shouldn't, or if I just had this, or if it's had this person to help me, or I'm going to wait till I get my manager is going to, all this stuff. Like, people set up so many obstacles, but if you can just push yourself to go, then you kind of can't stop. You know what I mean? You've already committed, you've already made those phone calls, people are depending on you, and you'd be really surprised at what you can accomplish with just, once you get past that initial sort of fear that we all have of doing anything big, you know what I mean? Because what's the biggest, your biggest fear is it's failing, right? But there's no failing. If you finish it, you've succeeded, you know what I mean? And I think that's like in anything creative, it's having something that just exists in the world, and you can't be concerned about who's going to like it, who's not going to like it. Did you nail it 100%? Because you're not going to, you're going to leave the project with some things that you wish you could have done different or better, had more time. But the fact that you make something and it exists in the world is just the endless energy that produces in your life is like invaluable. So, I guess that's why we do it. It's just because back to the Allegoria thing, this creative beast that's in us, as anybody out there that has that spark, it won't leave you alone. And the only time you will rest is, I think, when you do accomplish something, because until then you're going to have this anxiety, and you might not know why, you know what I mean? Because I think the art controls the artist, you know what I mean? The artist doesn't generally control the art. That's why if you're a writer or a painter or a musician, why do you wake up at 3 a.m. with a song idea? Why do you wake up and with a title for a story or movie concept. It's because it's pulling the strings on you. You're not in control. And I think that even lends even more to the whole horror aspect of art. It's like it's a form of possession. You know what I mean? We are possessed by our creative demons, so I think the only way to exercise those demons is to be productive, and that's what we try to do.
Hell yeah.
I love that justifies being more eccentric. You're like, it's not me, it's my art demon.
Not my fault.
But it's true. I mean, I don't sit down and force myself to be creative. It's always like it finds you, You're driving or you're in the shower or whatever, and all of a sudden, boom. So it's like, oh, I should do, and it's interesting. It's an interesting process that happens. I don't really know anybody that can force creativity, just like, there's a concept and it's kind of new agey or whatever, but like if you open yourself up to the universe, there's all these things floating around just waiting to be, accepted. And if you can be open to that, then you'll do, have all kinds of endless cool things to do,
I know you guys have been posting, videos and stuff on Instagram. Can you tell us a little bit about the movie you just finished and what it's about?
Yeah. You want to talk? No, you good.
Oh, you don't want to do it? Well, it's called Bury the Bride, and it's the first movie that we've actually written together. I directed it. Krsy stars in it along with Scout and a bunch of amazing actors that like we found some, I don't want to say unknown because they've all had accomplished things in their resume, but some people that are going to like blow you away. I feel so fortunate that we've been able to build this like group of actors. But anyway, it's a
don't give away the one thing though.
What do you mean? Where Santa Claus fights the devil?
Yeah, that's why you do it every time.
Well, anyway, to briefly put, it's a story of basically about these two sisters, and the younger sister is is engaged to sort of a mystery man that no one really knows that much about, and her older sister, played by Krsy, and her group of friends are not terribly supportive of this idea. So they go on a bachelorette weekend to the family home of this guy, only to discover it is not anything what they were expecting, and it's absolutely hell on earth, and terrible, terrible things happen to all of them. But we won't tell you what or how or under what circumstances.
But
it's
awesome.
a very like I was explaining, if Allegoria is like a cerebral, like think about it, kind of quiet movie, Bury the Bride is a very like physical movie. Very much more intense, I suppose, in a different way, and I guess more action oriented in a sense. It's a very smart movie too, but it's just it's a different tone for sure.
It took a lot out of, I think, everybody on the set, including crew. It really shows you, the impact, I think, of this movie. At the end of the day, we'd be like driving home and just like sort of tortured by whatever happened on the set that day to the characters, and editing it. I was in like this funk for like almost 2 weeks. I was just like, what's wrong with me? And it's because it's so intense and so heavy, but also like, there's like levity in the story, so it's like you like these people and it makes it so much worse. And it's just, I think we went pretty far with this film, which I think it became something even more than we thought it was once we actually started shooting it, which was crazy.
Right on. I can't wait to see that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, hopefully Panic Fest 2023. What's the next one? 22.
We're in 22 right now.
Yeah. I was gonna say, when's the Big Baby movie?
Yeah.
You're not the first to ask that. I feel like I'm being just pushed to do that. I feel like
the universe is telling you to do it. You just got to open yourself up.
Yeah.
There you go.
There's definitely going to be some resurrection of Big Baby in the future. There has to be, even if it's another short film or something. I feel like Big Baby is, although I do have a plan. So I want to make the Big Baby movie and then the Whistler movie, which is another character.
Oh, that'd be good.
And then Big Baby versus the Whistler. Freddy versus Jason. And then we'll just have a whole franchise going on.
The Big Baby cinematic universe.
You could just have that, like, every character in all of your future movies that watches a movie is always watching Big Baby.
Big Baby 5, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Big
I feel
Baby
like
6.
if we shot Big Baby the way we shot Big Baby in this film, we could probably shoot that in 3 days. So maybe it'll be out this year. Who knows?
You could get Vinegar Syndrome to put it out, and they could pretend it's some lost video nasty from the late 80s.
There you go. Well, listen, you guys can get working on that script. Let me know.
Does Big Baby need a script? He just goes, wah!
Yeah, you're right. We could just improv the whole thing.
Well, it's been great talking to you guys, and we like to close every interview by asking what your dream double feature would be at the drive-in. If you could play any two movies at a drive-in, what would you play?
God, you go first.
Well, okay. So I thought a lot about this. They totally don't go together, but I think maybe they'll be like a weird complement in very different films. And this is probably the weirdest answer, but I think just because I love both of these films, I do the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, and then The Craft to finish off the night. Yeah.
That's
so
a
it'd be
double
just
bill.
very like it would just like really you go through different things, and I feel like you would end the night feeling like pretty good.
Yeah.
But you know. And they're two of my favorite movies.
Hell yeah.
The Craft remake, though.
Of course.
No, the original. Come on.
Yeah. That's man, there's so many movies you could do a great double feature with. But you know what? I didn't have this plan. I just thought of this though. When I was a kid, I remember going to I think it was Disneyland or Disney World, and they don't have this anymore, but they had this little restaurant that was built to be like a drive-in, and you sat in cars. And they just showed trailers, but it wasn't really horror movies. It was all like classic sci-fi. So I know this is a horror podcast, but I think going to the drive-in and watching some old classic like Forbidden Planet and maybe The Day the Earth Stood Still, not the Keanu Reeves one, but the original, would be really fun. So if we went sci-fi, we'd do that. Or if we go horror, we're also going to go classic drive-in era, and we're going to do Them, which is the giant ants movie with Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. So there's my sci-fi and horror picks.
That's rad.
That's fun.
Hey, heads up though, Disney World in Florida still has that restaurant.
Oh, maybe that's it then. Maybe, yeah. I love that. I remember going there as a kid and thinking like, I want to live here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There was a time before we moved away from Toronto that we seriously considered buying a abandoned grocery store to basically turn it into that.
But making an actual drive-in that you could just go to in like shitty weather and stuff, and like waitresses ride around on like roller skates and give you burgers to your fake car.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
No, there's a similar in it unfortunately closed down, but it's funny. In Burbank, California, there was a Fry's, which is an electronics store that they had designed as all science fiction. And it's actually featured in Nope, which I just saw the other night. They're at Fry's, that's the Burbank Fry's with the flying saucer that's crashed into the front of the building. And so they had a little cafe there too, like that with cars, and they would show like science fiction trailers. I don't know. It's just there's something so comforting and cool about that. I just love it. So, yeah.
Great picks. Spider, Krsy, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
See you
Pleasure.
again.
Thank you so much to Spider-One and Krsy Fox for joining us on Nightmare on Film Street. Watch the film now on Shudder, Allegoria. It's dope. And then let us know what you think. You can tweet at us at NOFS Podcast. You can find us in our Discord server, nofspodcast.com/Discord. Be sure to comment in the spoiler channel if you're going to get spoilery. But be warned, it's a total nope situation.
Oh, yeah, you really, that's the thing. Like, no matter what movie comes out, like, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is coming out. And if you want to talk about Bodies, 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 you also have to have seen Nope. Because Nope is dominating the conversation, at least in the spoiler thread. But yeah, if you want to talk to us about Allegoria, we desperately want to talk to you about Allegoria. And also, it's an indie movie, so if you really liked it, you gotta recommend it to at least 10 friends. We need more people to see this.
If you're a fan of the show, be sure to leave us a 5-star review or rating, depending on where you're listening to this. It really helps the show grow, and we need your stars. Give us your stars. Until next time, I'm Kim.
I'm Jon.
Stay creepy.
It appears you made it out alive, but we'll get you next time. Help us to grow the horde. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. More terror can be found lurking on our website, nofspodcast.com. Until next time, stay creepy, fiends.